Welcome back to episode 21 of the Second Look Sports Podcast. I'm your host today, Justin Arnberg. Joined with me today is Alex Mandarino and Brandon Brown. Both are Leafs fans, so instead of even asking how your guys' week has been, because I know how it's been, I'm just going to start the show by saying congratulations, you're up 2-0 in the second round of the playoffs for the first time since 2002. Incredible stuff in games 1 and 2 against the Florida Panthers. How do you guys feel?
Brandon, take this one.
Well, I mean, yeah, like I feel great. I was saying to somebody today, it still feels weird to not be in a playoff series or in a playoff season in general and not have like a lot of anxiety and fear about the Leafs right now. It feels like there's so much optimism. It's been fantastic. It's been a great couple of weeks of hockey in general, but watching the Leafs obviously beat the Sens and now with the big lead on the Panthers going back to Florida, like it's a great feeling, and you can't help but smile and feel good, being around the city and talking to people. Everyone's excited, so it's been great.
There's not much else to say. Yeah, it's been an exciting couple of weeks, like you said, Brandon. I was convincing myself going into last night thinking, okay, if they lose this game, like they already took that first one, you don't want to split at home because you give Florida that, like they took home advantage away, but you can rationalize the idea that Florida's the Cup champions and they obviously split the series. Going into Florida, the Leafs are going to have to be a little bit more on their toes to start. And then they obviously take the victory. And there's so much that we could get into as to reasons why they won, but it's like a really relieving feeling. I'm not really ready to say that like they're comfortably in the driver's seat. I think the Leafs maybe put the car in neutral right now, but I don't know if they've actually taken or pulled out of the driveway yet, but they're in the driver's seat. We can just kind of be excited about that right now.
So they're in the driveway. They haven't taken off yet, but they're in the driver's seat.
They've put the Florida Panthers in the back seat, strapped them in, but we haven't left yet.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. So they win 4-3 last night. A game winner by Mitch Marner, the new dad. It's Miles, his newborn son. He even wrote it on his stick now. He's got the M. He's got the Z for Zeus, his dog. Listen. Are you guys like satisfied with this guy right now? Like, has he done enough to earn the contract he's going to get in the offseason? Are we at that point?
It depends what the contract looks like, I guess. It would still be my answer. You can't say I'm satisfied. They've got 2 wins in the second round. I definitely, while there's optimism and all the excitement that we've talked about, I don't think that anyone is satisfied yet and is ready to say it's over. Let's move on. It gives you the look that this group, this core can get it done together. At least it seems to be on their way, almost halfway through if they can pull out this series. So you see, I think, a vision of what this team can look like in the playoffs, and when they're at their best, it does seem like they can play with pretty much anybody in the league. So I think there's definitely more optimism towards the general fan thinking about whether or not they want to see Mitch Marner still in a Maple Leaf uniform next year. But I don't think anybody's ready to just put a pin on it and say whatever he wants, or whatever. It's still going to be a negotiation, and they got to figure out what's going to be best for the team in the long run. So.
Yeah, it's going to be complicated. And I think the reason is if there wasn't the emergence of a Matthew Knies in these playoffs. And I feel bad even saying emergence because he's been here pretty much all year. We've seen signs of his dominance in like his physicality in last year's playoffs and in the past, but we haven't really seen his scoring touch as much and his offensive ability bleed through because of the core four and the focus on them. And he's obviously forced himself into the conversation as an RFA this offseason. And with every goal, like I didn't say it out loud, but in my head, every time he scores, it's like, that's another 250K AAV. Oh, there's another 500,000. Like every goal or every good play he makes, like he's just building a new addition to the house that he's going to buy because he's going to get paid. And the question becomes, do the Leafs brass, if they're kind of organizing their thoughts and making the decisions in the offseason of who gets paid, do you offer Matthew Knies a contract first and deal with him and then go to Mitch Marner? And the reason being is offer sheets are now in like the front of a lot of GMs and front offices' mind. So it becomes more complicated now than I think it was at the beginning of the year. But Brandon, you're right in that I think there's still much to be proven, not by him, but by the team. Like if they can move past Florida and Mitch Marner continues what we've seen, both on the penalty kill, the power play, I guess not so much. They've been a little bit dry of late, but on 5-on-5, we can see him get paid. I just think there's still so many factors outside of even just Mitch Marner before that decision gets decided in the offseason.
Yeah. Sorry there. I just think when we talk about Mitch Marner and his past playoff runs, I would say the big complaint is that he hasn't shown up. I think through, 8 games now in these playoffs, you can't argue with any of the games. Maybe game 5 in Toronto is the only game he didn't really have a Mitch Marner-esque performance, but he has showed up in every single game for the most part and been the number one guy on the team outside of William Nylander. And it's been impressive to watch. And I think I relate this back to Four Nations. I really think he learned a lot from that tournament. Even though it's such a short tournament, I think he learned so much being around that group of guys, and he's able to now use that going into the 2025 playoffs. And we're seeing it on full display. Now, another person from last night's game that we have to talk about is Max Pacioretty. Habs legend signs a 1-year deal with the Toronto Maple Leafs this year. And at the beginning of the year, I remember you guys saying okay, we're going to get 20 games out of him. That's good enough. Whatever. That's all he's going to be. He gets injured. And of course, you're right. He doesn't play that much in the regular season. But now that he's back and he's healthy, he has made such an impact to that bottom 6. It's night and day difference what is happening on the ice right now, and his energy is so effective out there, and he's playing the style that Berube wants him to play. So when you look at Max Pacioretty, were you guys expecting this, or were you just is this just all gravy? That's what's happening right now with him.
I'll jump in quick here, Brandon, because I just think if you did expect this, maybe outside of Craig Berube or Max Pacioretty himself, I think you're lying, because I will be the first one hand up where I was why is he in the lineup after game 4 or 5 of the original series, the round 1 series in Ottawa? It's not he was playing bad. It's just you could see at times he was slower and he wasn't keeping up with the pace, especially after not playing for 27 or something games heading into the playoffs. And Nick Robertson, his penalties, you kind of had to discipline him. He was taking enough penalties where if you're not scoring and you're taking penalties, that's clearly not going to fly, especially with this team. And Craig Berube stuck with him. And not only did he stick with Pacioretty, he goes ahead and puts him on the second line alongside Tavares and Nylander in crucial moments in the first round. And you're and I'm first hand up. I'm this is an insane move. We didn't get to talk about it, I don't think, on the pod, but I'm this is not, there's no way this works. And he goes ahead and shoves it down everyone's throat, scores the winner. We're moving on to Florida in the second round. So I think it's crazy to think that outside of maybe just as general fans, we would have thought this would have happened, but I'm just happy for him. In his post game, I think after game 6, when he did score, he did say there's a bunch of times I've contemplated retirement with my family. And for whatever reason, he just sort of pushed through and was able to continue playing and clearly at a high level. So I was even thinking this morning, if he retires after this year, I think he could go in the sunset thinking I contributed. And not a lot of guys can be I'm beloved by both Canadians and Leafs fans alike. That's a crazy fact. So I'm happy for him more than anything.
Yeah, I think that's the crazy thing is I don't think anyone's surprised to see him. He was jumped into the lineup in the last series and really gave a physical edge. We all saw that in the regular season. He was seemingly a different player almost, where he was more concerned with playing the body and just trying to give his teammates a boost. And he keeps saying in these post-game interviews that all he wants to do is get Nylander and Tavares the puck and get these really strong players, get them in good position to make plays. And I don't think anybody expected him to be contributing as much offensively as he has, but I think it's fantastic that he's able to provide that. And even though now he's kind of up in the top 6, that's some good secondary scoring that you haven't really seen from the Leafs in the playoffs recently. So I think it's great. He's given them a good opportunity to show their depth, and he's helping out. And while he could, there's still a chance where he maybe doesn't play every game in the playoffs going forward, whether it's his body that doesn't allow him to do that, or something happens where they maybe want to get another look at somebody else. But I think having him in the lineup right now is imperative. He's the best. Mm-hmm. He's one of the better players at getting in deep, getting to the net, forcing turnovers. Like, he's doing a lot of great stuff, and I think that's what's really helping out.
And his physicality as well. I know you said like he's getting on the forecheck. He's also using his body when he gets on the forecheck. It's not just like he's just forechecking and he's forechecking hard. He's actually laying the body when he gets on the forecheck. Now, I wanted to bring up. I don't want to. Let's just like Craig Berube said, like after game one, he's moved on and he doesn't really want to talk about Stolarz. I don't really want to talk about Stolarz in like specifically here, but I do want to talk about Joseph Woll, because game one he comes in, and let's be frank, he has no warm up. He hasn't played in 18 days. Your mind's probably not right. In my opinion, he played game one pretty well for the circumstances that he was dealt. I know that there's some goals that, some people might want back. The high danger chances were like 14-12 in favor of Florida by the end of that game. So it's pretty impressive what he was able to do, in my opinion. Anyway, moving on to game two, though. He outperformed Sergei Bobrovsky the whole evening. And that's a storyline I don't think a lot of people are talking about. But when you looked at his game two performance, what did you guys see? Brandon, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely saw, I think, a lot of the similar, lines of thought that you were having, Justin. I think game one is a tough situation. I think everybody kind of understands that at this point. But for him to come in game two, have probably the weight of the world on his shoulders, feeling like he's got to be the guy now to jump in and at least match Stolarz' play, through the first series. And while I wouldn't necessarily say he's done that in his, game and a half, probably less than that now, experience this season in the playoffs, I think he's done more than an adequate job in terms of giving the Leafs a chance. They got down early last night. I think Florida had multiple leads at one point.
They had a 1-0 lead, and then they had a 2-1,
I think, as well. Yeah, so he was steady enough to give them a chance. The Leafs continue to crawl back in that game, and I think as long as the Leafs are playing the way they are in front of him, I think he should feel really good. The team should feel really good about what the situation is. Even if they go down a goal, they go down 2 goals. I think this team now, especially from what we saw in the first series, they're capable, and everyone feels good about them. At least on the offensive side. So I think as long as he can do what he is, even what he's done in the regular season this year, he's been fantastic in playoff chances, in previous years, but he's just been great. I think we should expect more from the Woll.
I hope so. Yeah. I really hope so for his sake, because like just impossible situation, like we just said, to be jumping in, and you sort of felt like, even though the Leafs had built up that 4-1 lead, and not on Joseph Woll specifically to let the goals in game one, you just felt like a lot of deflating, because I feel like it was almost like the shoe was going to drop at some point. You're like, oh my God, Stolarz can't beat. Like, there's no way as a Leafs fan you can just ride Stolarz for the whole playoffs. Like, you just kind of felt it, as wrong or as right as that might seem. And I think a lot of people forgot that Joseph Woll is very capable of a goaltender in the playoffs. It's just that there was a chasm built because of Stolarz being so steady, 6'6", and a massive presence in the net. And then poor Joe Woll sneaks in. I don't have his dimensions, his height, but he's not 6'6". So he sneaks in. You're like, who the hell is this guy from the stands, right? And yet people forgot that, like, Joe Woll is a very capable goaltender. We proved it last year when he came in for, I think it was Samsonov late, and obviously he was injured, and Samsonov had to play game 7. We don't have to go into the demons built from last year, but I think he just has to be capable of holding his own in this series. Like you said, Justin, he's outperformed Bob last night. We haven't seen the Bobrovsky of the past, which I think is awesome from a Leafs perspective to see that he's capable, he's beatable. The only thing about Joe Woll that I said multiple times last night, it's fixable, but he gives me so much anxiety when he plays the puck behind the net. I think he does it too often. And I think every time he does it, it's almost like you can tell he's a little bit nervous as to what play to make. And there's a couple of times where he's back there, he makes a pass and it's either too quick or he passes it to a defenseman that might not be ready, and the defenseman has to make a quick play. I think there was one where he passed it to Tanev. Tanev immediately fires it behind the net to whoever was on his side. I don't know if it was McCabe or not. And I feel like Stolarz is such a good presence behind the net in managing the puck that if it were me, if I were the goalie coach, or if Stolarz isn't traveling, that's something we haven't touched on. But anybody that works with Joe Woll, I would be like, let's work behind the net for a bit and kind of get some of that cleaned up for the next part of the series. Other than that, yeah, he's been very capable. And I think if he's in there, the Leafs probably still have confidence that they can win this thing.
I love the fact that they, instead of dressing Hildeby, I think it was smart to bring in Matt Murray, that veteran presence, get him on the bench. Even like commercial timeouts, we saw it last night. Like him and Matt Murray had a good rapport going on. And I think that's actually very helpful for Joseph Woll. Instead of Dennis Hildeby, I even mentioned on the broadcast, like Cuthbert said, Hildeby just looked panicked, like when he was sitting on the bench, like, oh, I have to go. I might have to go in here, boys.
Man.
He did not look calm, cool, and collected like Mitch Marner said they're playing right now. So anyway, finally, like, we just have to, we can touch on Stolarz not traveling, but I wanted to bring up the fact that what you said, Mando, because I do think it's important. The Leafs have found a way to beat Bobrovsky, and everyone knows his weak spot is above his glove. Like that's the weak spot that everyone seems to have figured out. The only problem is it's very hard to beat him, considering he takes up a lot of the net, and you're not going to get that most of the time. He's going to put that shot in a position that you're not really going to be able to see it, and he's going to leverage the other half of his body. So the Leafs have figured out how to beat him, and he has not looked like Sergei Bobrovsky of last year's playoffs or even 2023's playoffs. But I also have to say, it's not just Bobrovsky that's not playing great. It's like the star players that aren't playing great. And namely, I want to look at Matthew Tkachuk, because I don't think he has been effective in this series the way that, one might think of Matthew Tkachuk being effective in this series. So what are you guys seeing from him that he's just not doing Matthew Tkachuk-esque things on the ice?
I mean, I feel like we're seeing really not a lot outside of the clip that a lot of people had. I know I saw Tic Tac Tomar on X had it. That was the first time I saw it, but a bunch of people had the clip at the end of game one where he tries to take out Marner, right? And then he goes to cross-check him, and I think the feed cuts out. At least I didn't see the end of that. But, that's the only thing I've seen from him. And that was game one. I didn't see much from game two. I heard his name called a few times, but I wasn't really very, familiar with how he was playing. And I don't know if that's just that the Leafs have been able to neutralize his antics or the way he plays. Like, he's a big presence out there. But so far, I was way more nervous for Brady Tkachuk than I have been for Matthew Tkachuk. And I don't know if that's going to continue. I really seriously doubt it. I think you'd have to be a little naive to think he's going to make at least one statement moving forward, especially in Sunrise. I don't know what else to say other than we haven't seen much from him. And I hope we don't, but I know that after especially losing game two, Paul Maurice is going to be in his ear and the boys are going to be ready to go. So I don't think this is the last we've seen from him. I just haven't seen much from him thus far.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I don't know what it is. If it's maybe he's not as healthy as Paul Maurice seems to be saying he is. Maybe he just hasn't been able to get as involved in the series. But yeah, he's definitely not been the kind of initiator that I've expected him to be. We've seen Marchand, we've seen Bennett, obviously. We've seen a little bit of Ekblad even in game two. These guys know how to try to agitate and try to get under the skin. But Tkachuk, has seemingly been a bit mild, I guess, to start this series so far. And you're right, Alex. I think there's no doubt that he'll get into it and get it going. Maybe game three, they kind of get, kick in the pants and they're ready to go. But yeah, I've been a little bit surprised. You haven't seen him try to mix it up as much as you kind of expected, and he hasn't been the one flirting with the line, as on certain things as many as some of the other guys.
So it was 100% reported that he went overseas after the Four Nations during that time off that he had to figure out if he needed surgery or not. It seems like he decided not to get surgery and put it off till the end of the season at the most, or if it healed on its own. So I, like you said, Brandon, I think maybe there's something there that like Maurice is not giving, that like maybe he's just not 100%, and he wanted to come back. He felt 70%, maybe 60% at the start of the playoffs. And you know what? That's good enough to go playoff time if you're a hockey player, because you know how they think, you know how they operate. They're not just going to sit on the sidelines and heal up. They want to be in there. Like you got to think the same about Jason Robertson and Miro Heiskanen over in Dallas. Like I guarantee, like Robo came back last night in game one. We're going to get to that very shortly. But like he wasn't Jason Robertson, and I don't think he's going to be Jason Robertson, because they're just back to the point where they're going to be effective, but they're not going to be the same player that they have been at their most dominant peak. The last thing before I ask you about game 3, I just want to recap this from game 2. We talked about Max Domi's, we saw Max Domi probably get the softest call in NHL playoff history for that non-cross check. And then game 2 followed it up with an even worse one for the Florida Panthers, because how in the world do you call an embellishment on Evan Rodriguez for getting his head smashed into the glass by Scott Laughton? Like, even as a Leafs fan, I know you're sitting there saying, no, yeah, that's not embellishment. Like, you got to give a penalty for that.
That was insane.
Like, when you guys saw that, like, what were you thinking?
People were tweeting, I think, like that there could be a 5-minute major on that play, and then all of a sudden that call was made and people kind of lost their minds. I don't really think. First of all, I'll start and say I unless there was something said on the ice or something that the ref caught that could not be seen on the broadcast, I have no idea. But there's no way that's an embellishment call. I think we all agree there. I think they were trying to. I said this to somebody today. I don't even know if this is true, but I think they were just trying to match the penalties. They eventually did, but I think they just went about it and they just kind of brain blasted it. Like they went too far. They didn't really need to. They could have just done 2 for boarding, 2 for roughing. I guess Schmidt came in. And then that's it. But they added on like the 4 minutes, like as if it's something that was needed to be there. And then that's where the embellishment kind of came in and matched up the minutes. I didn't really understand what they were doing. But I think last night we can all agree it was just not a very well officiated game in general. I think it was very strange.
Yes, strange. They let it go way too much in the second period. Even afterwards, there was a penalty kill for the Toronto Maple Leafs after Holmberg got into it with Jones a couple times in that period. He got taken down, didn't like it, went retaliated. Not a great penalty for Holmberg, and if that's one player that could be out of the lineup, that's probably the guy going for that kind of penalty. But then then on that same penalty kill, there's like 3 or 4 more plays that you could have took more people to the box, and they just didn't, and they let the game get crazy, which is okay for fans, but at the same time you're also wanting penalties if you're a fan base or you're a fan of those actual fan or franchises. So game 3, like I shouldn't even just say games 3, game 3 and 4, like what are you expecting from the Leafs come Friday night and Sunday night?
Like in the past years, like truthfully, as a Leafs fan, like I would expect them to wither a little. And I just think it's the idea that like they're up and you have guys like a Willie Nylander who we all know how good he is and how confident he is. And he's a very like nonchalant guy in the media. It seems like even behind the scenes, he's just happy to do his own thing. And he's not very high, not very low. And when you see him, and this is not an indictment on his playoffs, it's the opposite. He's been the best player on the Leafs thus far. Like, I don't think that's questionable, but there's times in the past where if you see him, like maybe not back checking, people automatically are like, you're not invested. And we've seen that a lot in the past with some of the core 4 players not performing. And now they have the grasp on this lead. But I think now that they have Craig Berube at the helm, there's been so much like more confidence that he's instilled probably in his team. And I think the fan base feels a little bit better because even when the Leafs get down a goal or two, they're not out of it at any stretch. We've seen this time and time again, especially in this series when they've either held the lead and it's been close. Matthew Knies puts the puck in. They're down 1-0. They're down 2-1. Max Domi or someone else, Pacioretty, for example, comes in clutch. So they're never out of it. So I think that Florida's going to be humming early. First 10 minutes in Sunrise, I think Wall's going to get peppered with shots. But I really still think that the Leafs are going to be resilient as much as possible. I think if I were to predict the outcome of the games, I think they split them. I do think Florida takes the third game just because pure adrenaline. But I do think that Craig Berube is going to like get the guys in order and be like this is the Demons. Let's squash them right now and let's move on and let's take game 4. And if you win game 4, you're up 3-1. We can do this. So I do think that they split the series. And I just think that they do their best to quell Florida, at least in the second half of this home series, home advantage for the Florida Panthers.
Yeah, I mean, listen, there's only really 3 outcomes, right? Like it's either they sweep Florida, which I don't think anybody's really expecting that. I mean, looking at the way the games have played out, it's not entirely impossible, but yeah, that wouldn't be my first choice. Obviously, they could take the 3-1 lead. I think, Alex, that's a very literal way of looking at things. Like the way that the games again have played out, the Leafs have been the better team. I think they deserve to win both games. They're in a position now where, yeah, if they split these games, I don't think anybody would be too surprised. That's probably the way I would lean as well. But if they give up to Florida at home and they're coming back, to Toronto in Game 5 with a split, I think going into the series you would have taken that. But I feel like at this point now, if that were to happen, I think it would almost be like it would feel at least in the city, the vibe would be like almost a disaster. It would feel like they really squandered or missed an opportunity, whatever you want to say. And then, the pressure would really be on. So it feels like 3-1 is really their best chance to come back and obviously end the series early. But yeah, I don't think anybody would feel great unless the game's played out maybe in overtime or two, or the games are just as close as they've been, and it's really just hard to choose who the better team is. But with Florida's recent experience, and if they look to start to gain momentum, I think it would be very scary if they came back to Toronto tied at 2.
Yeah, I agree. I think like if they don't, it would be a missed opportunity to take a stranglehold on this series. And I think Leafs fans, like you said, would feel like kind of let down in the sense that you didn't go and get that 3-1 lead. I don't think that they're going to sweep either. I think 3-1 though is a split. It's funny though. We talked about all season long, like how they can't match up. That's the one team they suck matching up against. And it's funny what a playoff coach can do for you in like Craig Berube. It's really remarkable considering like you would think the way we saw the Leafs play the Panthers in the regular season and how they're playing them right now, it's two totally different things. Like in the regular season, they seemed to have no space and they weren't able to connect passes. They weren't able to break out of their own zone. Right now, like they're playing unbelievable hockey, like some of the best hockey I think we've seen them play all season long. So it's just remarkable to see what they've done. Anyway, moving on to
I just have one more thought, Justin,
go ahead.
the fans, because I think what you said, Brandon, was very key. If at the beginning of the series, if you fast forwarded to Game 5 and there was a split, I think everyone would take it. The Leafs fans don't matter. It's all about the team. Like they're the ones on the ice. But obviously I went on a rant I think it was last week, where Leafs were up 3-1 and then they lost Game 5. And it was like a pretty obviously their worst playoff game this year. But people were going insane. And I think this is just another exercise to be like, let's all just calm down. This team does look a lot different. It looks like they're in control. You would have taken whatever outcome after Game 4. Like any outcome is fine. Like you obviously would love the sweep or 3-1 like we're saying. But if you come out of it and Florida wins both, like it's in a way not surprising because it's home advantage. You did the same thing in Toronto. Let's all just calm down and let's just trust that this team can handle it like they haven't done it in past years. Let's not go crazy as a fan base because no one's listening. You're just talking to yourself and everyone's just making themselves sicker. I think it's just patience is the virtue here is my thought.
I agree. And I think The Florida Panthers are the defending Stanley Cup champions for a reason,
Yeah.
and they're not going to go down without a fight. So,
Exactly.
moving on to who might be a Stanley Cup champion at this point, the Dallas Stars take Game 1 over the Winnipeg Jets 3-2 on a natural hat trick by Mikko Rantanen, who might be the hottest hockey player in the entire world right now. Even better than Connor McDavid. He is on another planet right now. The revenge tour is in full effect. The man has 14 points in his last 4 games. It is unreal what this guy is doing. It is insane what he is doing. Let's just get your guys' thoughts on his performance from Game 1, and then we'll go into Dallas taking home ice advantage away from Winnipeg.
I mean, for me, like that's the key is Rantanen, right? Like everyone seems to have forgotten how much of a playoff performer he's been in the past because he went to Carolina and then obviously that seemed to work out right away, and then got to Dallas, and I think there was a little bit of anxiety, at least there, about what it was going to look like, and he maybe wasn't up to his performance. Obviously, moving around as much as he has can't be easy, but as soon as it seemed like Game 1, he's kind of been on a different level. I've been really excited to watch him play, and I think he's deserving of everything that's happening. He's really, especially with key guys like Robertson and Heiskanen, like he was more of an addition even than you can say he would have been if those guys were healthy. So I think he's done a great job in helping them obviously get past his former team and all the emotions around that, and to perform as well as he has been fantastic. So yeah, I think our early Conn Smythe favorite so far if they were to get that far.
Yeah, easily. And look, leading the league in points. And I think we talked about this either on this show or it may have been mentioned by like Christian and Dave on the hockey podcast that we have. But going in, Mikko Rantanen, before this playoffs, I had to do some math looking at his hockey DB to get the numbers right. But he played 81 playoff games before this year, and he had 101 points. So like this Mikko Rantanen really is nothing new. But a lot of the doubters were suggesting that obviously like Nathan MacKinnon plays a huge factor in Mikko Rantanen's performance. And I think that's still possible to some degree that he elevated it. I don't think that's newsworthy, but the playoffs are still a different beast. And we've seen, even as Leafs fans, and again, we're done talking about the Leafs, but we've seen people like the Matthews and the Marner, when the lights are brightest, they sometimes will shrivel. And Mikko Rantanen, even now without Nathan MacKinnon, it's very clear that he is in the spotlight. And even when he was playing for Colorado, like playoffs are different, regardless of who your line mates are. You have to put the team on your back sometimes. So I don't like that excuse. And clearly he's proving it this year. Like there's something going on in Dallas, man. I don't know what it is. If it's the green lights that are going down the stairs in their arena or what, but Rantanen deserves all the credit he deserves. It must suck to even be an Avs fan watching the playoffs now, being like, what the hell happened here?
Yeah, it must be an absolute disappointment. I know Joe Sakic and Chris McFarland had their postseason presser. We're going to get to it a little bit later in the NHL news roundup, but I had to double check this because this is absolutely ridiculous. The all-time points per game leaders in the playoffs, Mikko Rantanen sits 7th at 1.3 points per game. And that's ahead of people like Mark Messier, Bobby Orr, Mike Bossy, Yari Curry, Peter Forsberg, and Sidney Crosby. That is insanity. This guy is insane. Nathan MacKinnon is just above him at 1.316 points per game. So they're neck and neck. They do the exact same thing. Listen, if you're Colorado and you know what you have gotten out of him for the last decade in the playoffs, and what is everyone chasing? Playoff performers. This guy is an all-time playoff performer, and you just gave him to Carolina, in all fairness. You tried to give him to the East, and then he gets shipped back to the West, and he's just going to make you regret this for the whole 8 years. And I don't think Joe Sakic is going to let this down. But moving on from the Moose, because this guy is, obviously the Conn Smythe favorite right now, if we have to give one out right now. Moving on from them, Connor Hellebuck and the Winnipeg Jets. Listen, I don't think that you can play, or there was any chance that the Winnipeg Jets were going to be able to play with the same emotion as Game 7, coming off that big of a high and going back to Game 1. But even though the start was terrible from them, I liked how they got into the game later on, and I thought they competed well. Connor Hellebuyck, to me, had I don't want to say he cost them the game, because those shots are ridiculous from Rantanen, and he has no chance on 2 of them at least.
Yeah.
And I would say he had a decent performance. Like, he wasn't superstar material, but he didn't cost them, or he didn't have a lacklustrous game like he did, like when you're looking at him in Game 7 or Game 6 and Game 5. Like, what was your guys' evaluation of Connor Hellebuyck in Game 1?
Yeah, I think that's exactly what you said. I saw like 1 or 2 comments online basically just saying like, oh, like Hellebuyck again, like didn't perform. And you look, I think his save percentage was like .875, but it's first of all, there's so many factors to numbers in the NHL that sometimes one number doesn't stand out. I think he let in 3 goals for 24 shots. And it's just the math there that makes his numbers look bad. If you watch the game or even the highlights, like you said, Justin, 1 goal deflects off Dylan Sandberg's shin guard, and 1 he doesn't quite grab. So obviously, like, Mikko Rantanen puts the puck in. And Sandberg, again, I like Sandberg as a player, but he didn't have his guy in Mikko Rantanen. He scored as he was falling over. So I think Hellebuyck played good. He made some big saves when he needed to. And like, the emotion for both of those teams was probably dying down. And Winnipeg woke up, and they just weren't able to put any more pucks past Jake Ottinger, who had a sensational game on the other end of the ice. So I think Hellebuyck played fine. And I don't think this series he necessarily has to be like beast mode and he has to play unbelievable. It's possible that changes early, and I eat my words, because Dallas does have some superstars and Jason Robertson rounding into form, but you're not playing Mark Scheifele. And like, that's huge. He's been their offensive dynamo all year, and he's been top 5 in goals scored in the regular season, and their emotional leader, I'm sure, as well. So it sucks to lose Game 1, especially at home. And Dallas, I don't think has won a Game 1 in a long time. So good for them. But I still think the Jets, again, just a product of like an emotional Game 7. They weren't in it right away in the first 10 minutes, but they eventually woke up, and it just couldn't get it past.
No, you're right. I think the Scheifele injury, even though he did come back, I think he scored the second goal for
he
the
did.
Jets. He's still not going to be himself. It's similar to the Tkachuk situation.
Sweet feed from Gabriel Velarde in the slot.
Yeah.
Like, on the forecheck, it was an absolute snipe from Scheifele.
Yeah. And even like the Niederreiter goal, I think, like you said, Justin, I agree. The Jets were hemmed in early. They couldn't really get going. They scored the first goal in the second period somehow. Niederreiter, I didn't really like that goal from Ottinger, even though he played great pretty much the rest of the game. But like, for the most part, yeah, like, Winnipeg should feel pretty good. They stuck with it. I think Dallas could have kind of ran away with that game. I think Hellebuyck helped get them early on, kind of settled things down and allowed them to keep going. Maybe, yeah, if you want to, like, you could complain about a small stretch in the second period, obviously, where he allows the 3 goals, but one of them's on the power play. I think the even strength goals were 2-2. So when you look at things that way, Winnipeg should be, obviously they're going to be disappointed with the loss, but they did a lot of good things later in the game, and I think they can still feel good about their chances in this series. The huge thing is just both these teams are missing their number 1 D-men, and what are you going to do in that situation, right? Guys are stepping up, and at that point, it's just about who is the deeper team, and I think most people would probably agree that Dallas is maybe more so, especially in the top end, just a little bit deeper, and maybe the goaltending will be the difference once we get to the later games. But this should be a fantastic series as well. We haven't. It's every series in the West so far has been fantastic, and I think this is just going to continue.
I said this actually at baseball or softball on Tuesday night. I said to Alex and Eric, who's one of our friends off that works at Sportsnet, I said, like, any of the 8 teams, I would not be shocked at this point if they won the cup. Like, they're all deep and talented. Like, there's not going to be like a Cinderella story team that wins the cup that you're just going to be like, how did they make it? Or like, am I shocked that they won? I don't think so. All 8 teams are so deep. Like, they're so good. But I want to go back, just wrap up this Jets Stars series. Is game 2 a must win for the Winnipeg Jets? Or do you think going down 2-0, there's still a chance that they could come back?
I mean, I would say that they should feel like they need to win it. I don't think it's a must win in terms of their season won't be over if they do lose. But I would say that they should be acting like it is, because it'll be very tough, especially for that team with some of the injuries that we talked about and just their style of play. It'll be tough to hold Dallas down for the next 5 games if they were to go down 2-0. And I think at this point winning game 2 is of dire importance, unless they feel they can really go into Dallas and take 2 there. So that's where I think they're at.
I think it's fair. Yeah, I think it's not as much of a must win as maybe you'd look at other series and think if you lost home advantage, especially after the game 1, that they would have to win game 2. But I think what's important, and I just said that Connor Hellebuyck doesn't have to be like a beast. He doesn't have to be the guy that saves the whole series for them, but he does need to perform well. Like if Dallas loses and it's another Hellebuyck blowout, like that's a major problem, because then you have the question marks again. If there's another game like this where Dallas wins 3-2 or Hellebuyck makes some good saves, but a couple chintzy ones get by that he had no chance to stop, then I think it's less panic time because he's dialed in. It's a problem if Hellebuyck, has to get pulled or lets in 4 or 5, because then the alarm bells are sounding.
Let's go to another Western Conference series now where the home team did lose home ice advantage. Yeah. And like you said, it might be an even bigger must win in game 2. I know it's happening tonight as we record, so we'll know the result tomorrow morning when this comes out. But the Edmonton Oilers, man, like they look scary now. Like it looks night and day difference between what we saw in game 1 against the Los Angeles Kings and what we saw in game 1, say game 7 overall, versus the Vegas Golden Knights. And I purely think this is based on just them getting more healthy and more chemistry playing together and more understanding where everyone wants to be on the ice, how everyone operates on the ice. Like Klingberg, like I said, like in the first series, there was a play like not understanding how Draisaitl plays. Like now Klingberg is like having an unbelievable playoffs. Like he has really stepped up. So they're the first team in NHL history to have 5 games in a row of multi-goal comebacks.
Yeah.
What are your guys' thoughts on the Edmonton comeback Oilers in their game 1 victory over the Vegas Golden Knights?
Yeah. They're scary. They're scary now because they're getting the depth scoring and they're getting the guys that normally wouldn't perform in the past. And that's been the whole like Leon and Connor show. It's not that as much anymore. First of all, 2 things. The Connor Brown goal, I don't know. Like Shea Theodore looked like he played house league. He looked like he's never played hockey in his life. And he's a great defenseman. He got turned around and then he was a step or 2 behind Brown, and he gives him the old like little tap on the stick. Like, dude, you can't do that. Like, you have to skate. So that was one of the crazier things I've seen. Incredible celebration from Connor Brown. He just stops in the middle of the Vegas bench. And I'm like, what's going on here? He looks mad. Like, did the puck not go in? Mugged. Unbelievable. You mean mugged. Incredible celly. That was commented on I think on 32 Thoughts by Elliot Friedman. But I think the scariest thing is that they're doing this without Matthias Ekholm, especially with such a heavy D in Vegas's perspective. They're doing this without a really good back end. Calvin Pickard is holding his own. He's the goalie that, again, he is just be Calvin Pickard, right? And like, as long as you're holding your own, Edmonton can win shootouts. They can win 5-4, 6-5 if necessary. They have the big dogs. Now, that being said, I do think Vegas completely destroys this team in game 2. I'm just going back on what I'm talking about. And the reason I say that is because you can't consistently win comeback games. It's awesome that they're doing it. And I believe that Edmonton is poised right now to win this series. I just don't think with what Vegas brings to the table and the depth that they have and that back end. And I think Pietrangelo should slot in game 2. I think he was sick for game 1. I think they're like not in our house. Like, Vegas doesn't go down easily. And I just think Edmonton is going to have to continue what they're doing, but they're going to have to get a lead and hang on to it at least once or twice if they're going to actually have success in winning this series.
Yeah, he was just sick in game 1, so he should be back for game 2 tonight.
Yeah, and I can't help but agree, Alex. I think at some point, I'm not going to say that Edmonton's been lucky, because that's very skillful to be able to come back and play as well as they have. They heard what I said, I guess, after they were down 2-0 to the Kings. I think it was a couple weeks ago. I pretty much said the Oilers were pretty much dead. So, I mean, credit to them for coming back to life and showing me, I guess, what they're made of, because, yeah, they've been fantastic and they will not be stopped, it seems. But, eventually you can't keep doing this. It's going to be, unless they can figure out how to get ahead in a game or figure out a way to stick with it, a little bit closer and just play a little bit of a tighter game. But, credit to Pickard for sure. And to Klingberg and all the depth guys on the Oilers, because they've been playing great. And because we know what's going to happen, McDavid and, Draisaitl are going to show up. So for everybody else to be playing as well as they have, it's been a bit of a surprise for me for sure. So it's great.
Like you said, though, Mando, the scary part is, they don't have Ekholm and they're still doing this. And
yeah,
the thing is, he is ruled out for round 2 of the playoffs, but he has not been ruled out for the Western Conference Finals if it happens, or the Stanley Cup Final if it happens, which leads me to believe he's out for at least a month. We know that these 2 series will take up a month. But I don't think he's out for the whole playoffs. I don't think if there has been any report saying that there was any concern that he missed the whole playoffs. So at some point, if you advance to the Western Conference Finals, you might get him back, which makes the team even more dangerous, because that's their anchor on defense. And as much as Evan Bouchard screws up defensively sometimes, you got to give the man some props. He has a higher points per game than Cale Makar in the playoffs. He has 1.1 points per game.
It's nuts.
It's ridiculous.
It's incredible.
It is insane what Evan Bouchard turns into in the playoffs. Talk about a guy that's going to get offer sheeted this summer potentially. That would be one of them. Evan Bouchard is just insane in the playoffs. He turns turns his game up to another level. It's really remarkable to see. I know that you guys think Vegas is going to win tonight, but if somehow Edmonton is able to take games 1 and 2 on the road, they go back to Edmonton for game 3 and game 4. Do you think that they sweep this series?
No, I don't. I'd be shocked if Vegas went out that way. I think even if they were to lose tonight and go down 0-2, you're going to see a very motivated and intense team coming into Edmonton at that point. I don't think, the way Vegas plays, it's hard to, like I said, shut them down. We saw Minnesota have some success early against them too.
Yeah.
And Vegas just keeps going, and they don't stop, and they play a very heavy game. They're hard to score on. They have a lot of talent themselves, and yeah, it's not out of the realm of possibility, but the way that Edmonton's moving right now. But I think the way that I've seen Vegas this year, I don't expect a sweep. That's for sure.
Yeah, there's not much else to say. I agree with you, Brandon. I think it would be crazy. Stranger things have happened. We've seen this sweeps happen before. We even saw first round with Tampa and Florida. I don't think a lot of people anticipated Tampa going out that way. But yeah, deep team, and just they've got a lot of firepower. I think it's just a matter of time before they get to Pickard in at least one game.
So let's move on to the final series of the second round of the playoffs. Probably the least talked about series, just because, especially up in Canada, because it's 2 American teams. It's the only series with 2 American teams. By the way, I forgot to mention this off the top of the show. First time since 2004, 3 Canadian teams have made the second round of the playoffs. So it's pretty remarkable that we're in this spot in the first place. And that's why we have so much attention to 3 series right now. But this is the series that probably I guess is drawing the least amount of attention going into it. Carolina does squeak out the game 1 victory, taking home ice advantage away from Washington with an overtime victory. I'm not going to lie, I was at softball, so I didn't get to catch this game. Jacob Slavin, though, I did get to see his goal. He came out at 4-8. Everyone that knows hockey knew that Jacob Slavin was really good, but then he became known to the world, or hockey world, I should say. the whole world doesn't watch hockey, so that's just a terrible take. But he became known to the hockey world at Four Nations for how good of a defensive defenseman this guy is, and he showed it in Game 1. What do you guys think of him stepping up to the plate and his performance overall?
I think it's I mean, just good for him, good for Carolina. They have more of a system type way that they play their game, and they fired a bunch of shots on net in Game 1, and clearly that was the strategy that got them the victory, putting the pucks on net. Stankoven also, I know I'll get back to Slavin in a second, but Stankoven, great addition for them. It's just been so interesting to see how the Mikko Rantanen triangle of teams that he's made and the damage he's left, like how it's all kind of like transpired. Like really,
let's
Colorado got caught holding the bag.
Yeah, let's actually like go off Slavin there for a second. Like Stankoven, that like everyone was like, this trade is not great for Carolina right now. Like you lose this deal. Stankoven's came in there and has not been like that big of a drop off from Martin Necas, I would say. Like I don't think that's a crazy take to say. So if you got a Martin Necas player at that level, and then you get 3 first-round picks on top of that, and I think it's like 3 seconds or 2 seconds on top of that, like this trade is going to be really good for the Carolina Hurricanes. They walked away a lot better than the Colorado Avalanche did, that's for sure. But yeah, like when you look at Stankoven's performance in the playoffs this far, like he is the perfect Carolina Hurricane. And I don't do you guys think like there isn't a better fit for him on a team than Carolina?
It seems that way. Like it just seems that way. I mean, I don't know. I know, Brandon, you're thinking about like who you could fit with better. It just so far it just seems like it's been a great fit in a lot of aspects. That just doesn't seem like they're missing Necas, which is who they had at the start of the season. So when you just look at the pieces that each team has, based on how they started their year, it doesn't look like Carolina's had much of a drop off. And I mean, same thing with Slavin. He's been that player for a long time, but he's not been known for his offense. I don't know if he turns into an offensive juggernaut from the back end here on out. It's great to see him score. He's probably just going to, go back to his defensive ways. I'm agreeing with you, Justin. I didn't watch this game. Didn't have a chance to. It's probably the series that might end up just being the least exciting. But I don't want to put a cap on that because we're going to get to NBA. And I feel like, Justin, your and I's take. Brandon was on this originally, how it's been an exciting playoffs. And we were like, no, it hasn't. And the NBA has been crazy. All that to say, didn't watch the game, but I'm glad Slavin got some more flowers because he deserves it. Brandon, I'm wondering how you're thinking this series has gone, if you got a chance to check it out as well.
Yeah, I mean, I did get to watch the majority of that first game on Tuesday night, and I thought, I wasn't necessarily surprised. I think most people would expect that this series, while may not get the most attention, it could be a very tight and could go pretty deep because it's hard to separate these two teams. Carolina, they got down. I think it was Washington took the lead in the second period, and the way that Caps team can play, I mean, it was hard to see the Hurricanes even getting one to tie that game up. Eventually they do in the third and sends it to overtime. But yeah, like I think this series, if you're like a real hockey head and you love watching, puck battles in the corners and guys really trying to get in front of the net and trying to make space and none of that space being available, this series might be for you because it's a lot of big, strong players. And I think, Alex, you made the good point about Stankoven. Like or Justin too, like he's going to be a great Hurricane. I think he fits their system very well. He adds talent to a little bit of ferocity and he really plays hard. He's, I think, the kind of guy that Rod Brindamore is going to really love. And that, if he becomes a real stud, I mean, that deal just gets better and better every day for the Hurricanes there. So I'm excited to see how the rest of the series plays out. I think Washington will, get their stamp on this too, especially game 2 again at home. I think they will have a really good chance to come out and win that game. And if they do, then we're just looking at another deep one, another great series in the Stanley Cup playoffs so far.
And this series also has some bad blood, if you guys remember from earlier on in the season, or not early in the season, but like closer to the end of the regular season when Jalen Chatfield kind of threw Connor McMichael, I believe, without a helmet, and then the tempers flared in that. So this series actually has some built up tension in it, and we should see some, physicality, like vicious hockey being played, which I think is what people are gonna probably tune into the series for the most if there is some bad blood there. Moving on to the NHL roundup. First off, we got to go to the Mammoth. The Utah Mammoth is official. They've chosen their name to be the Mammoth. So obviously they can't get Yeti. They weren't able to get Yeti because of copyright or trademark right. They went through court. The court denied it, unfortunately. But the Utah Mammoth and their whole brass, they did not miss a beat. Did you guys check out the promotion video that they did with it?
Yeah.
I liked it. So they had little Easter eggs in there, and did you guys notice they it's Utah, so it's outdoor stuff. They used Yeti's the water cooler, outdoor cooler and stuff, rival cup, the Stanley Cup, in their video. And yeah, it's kind of crazy just how much detail went into that video. It was they did not miss. Anyway, no. Getting to the real hot topic question. When you look at the logo and the jerseys and the branding, what do you guys think? Do you think it was the right decision not bringing a brand new jersey in general, or do you guys like the colors with the new logo on it? What are your guys' thoughts with that?
I mean, I really like the color scheme that they've used even last year. I mean, the baby blue is nice, if that's the official name for that color. But I like the incorporation of the black. I think that's, for me, it stands out. It's something that not a lot of the NHL teams really use. And I think that's at least what allowed me to kind of enjoy it last season. And I like the logo. It's a little EA Sports for me, but I think at the same time, it looks really good. I like some of the Easter eggs even within the logo. They've got the mountain ranges, which are supposed to reflect, real life. And I think there's a little bit of a shape for the state of Utah in there as well. Yeah. The tusk is really great. And even the alternate logos, the little U with the swoop, with the tusk swoop and everything. I think they look really good. I think they'll grow on a lot of people. I'm sure the people in Utah are super excited to kind of have this finally rolled out and can kind of get behind what the team should look like for a long time now. So I was pleasantly surprised. It's too bad that there was kind of a leak. I think everyone was kind of saw this coming over the last couple of weeks, but at the same time, they stuck to their plan. I think everything looked really good. Like you said, Justin, the promotional stuff, all the merchandise, which I think is supposed to come out very soon. And I'm sure you'll see some of that rocked around everywhere at some point. So, yeah.
Agreed. I think it was awesome. I think you're right. I don't think you can buy a jersey till closer to the season. But I liked it. Yeah, I like the name. I think it's cool. And in terms of the logo, I like the logo. I think my thought on this was, I think maybe the colors, because the colors are that, and apparently Brandon, it's mountain blue. But I love the blue too, but apparently mountain blue.
I knew it was something to it.
They're very specific about all this. And I think it's rock black and salt white. It's just their colors, guys. Cool. Come on. But yeah, there you go. So mountain blue, I agree. Love the color scheme. That's a really good point about the black. There's not a lot of teams that have their home or I guess home jersey that's black specifically. I can think the Hurricanes contributed maybe Boston. In their alternate.
Boston, I think, Boston is the one has it. Where they're that's Boston. Their main. Dallas has an alternate as well. That's mostly black, but it's underused.
Their main though, sure. Right? Definitely.
I
think that's a good point.
Just the third.
Right. So and those are horrendous jerseys though, by the way. I don't like the neon. That's just my right. So that doesn't even count. They should just burn those. But I think just because of the blue, black and white, I think because the blue is maybe featured so much in the logo, I wonder if that's why a lot of people had a similar thought to you, Brandon, that it's kind of like EA Sports like. So I can kind of see that being a reason. Maybe that's my thought. I kind of liked it. I always feel like, anything new when it comes to logos, a lot of people can be pretty skeptical about like how it looks. I think a lot of people felt the way about maybe not so much the Golden Knights V logo with the helmet, but I know a lot of people were like, I don't know how I feel about the Seattle Kraken. And I'm not a huge fan of it. Maybe it grows on people, maybe it doesn't. I think it was interesting the fact that they stuck with the Utah white jersey. They didn't put the logo, at least the plan for this year is just to have Utah diagonally down the jersey. I love those jerseys. Rangers have them. There's other teams that aren't coming to mind that have them, but I really like it. And I think the fact is, like, marketing, obviously you're going to sell more jerseys if you create new ones, but I think it's cool. I think it's unique. I don't know if a lot of teams have something like that their jerseys are different.
I think that's a really good point you just mentioned there about like potential. I think if they did that, maybe just to leave room to do a third jersey at some point, or to do another alternate, or just to kind of say, instead of throwing it all out there, they leave it for later kind of thing. I think that's a really good point.
True. I think that mountain blue, you're going to see a jersey made.
That could be it.
That'll be their third jersey. I think that's going to be their primary color on that jersey. Let's go to where you might see this jersey in the first place on an actual player, and that would be the NHL draft. And the lottery just happened. The 3.5% odds to get the first overall pick. The New York Islanders somehow get away with the number 1 overall pick. Were you guys shocked with that in the first place? Were you shocked 10 went up to 1 in that case? I listen, this lottery is just like the NBA lottery now. It's going to be crazy all over the place, and you're going to see movement. Even Utah, like we just said, they moved from 14 to 4. Like, that's a big, big move for them, which is great for their organization. But yeah, I just quickly on that, do you guys think that, or were you guys shocked about how much movement there was?
I mean, I was shocked. I was rooting. I thought you guys had it. I thought even after which I will say, I know a lot of people were like, I'm confused about how the system works with the way they were showing it. I thought it was fantastic. I thought the way they presented it, the way they really built kind of the excitement going into that final ping pong ball being pulled out. I was like, okay, I have an idea actually of who has the best chances, who's actually pulling this out, and how. I felt like everyone was involved. But at the same time, I can understand that people didn't like it. But what were you gonna say, Justin?
So you took my question. That was gonna be my question. Like, how you guys actually? I was gonna see what you guys thought about people moving up in the draft, and then I was gonna ask you guys like how you actually thought of the draft lottery. This is the first time they actually did it live, where you actually got to see what's happening. The only thing that there was two things. One is kind of a nitpick thing where I wish that like they had a board showing like the odds moving. I think it would have been a lot simpler if you would have shown the updated odds, like with teams instead of where they originally were, like update the odds with the teams that might have the highest chances, like make it so it actually makes or looks like you know what I mean, like 1, 2, 3, whatever teams are eliminated, like just put to the side, and then just like have the highest odds down instead of like, you know, the Islanders and the Penguins still were sitting at 9 and 10 on the other side of the board, and it was kind of confusing trying to figure out which side and who was where with what odds. Still, that was my nitpick. The one thing that I just didn't, I loved the anticipation. It just felt like, how can you go and do a draft lottery and the number 1 pick be the first thing that you do? Only because then, like, after that, everyone just tunes out. Like, you don't need to stay and watch the whole thing. The whole point was to build it up. So why give away the first overall pick first thing? Everyone can just leave. Like that there's no point in building it up at that point. Like, true. Why did everyone want to stay and watch the second and rest of the draft order? Like, you already know who got the first overall pick. Like, that was just a weird thing. Like, when I first saw the balls like happen, I had no idea what was really happening. But like, I was like, is this for like 16th overall? Like, are we going 1 through or 16 to 1? Like, is that how this works? Like, that's the way I thought it was going to work, but apparently not. So, yeah.
It was Monday night, and so I was working the Leafs game 1, and so we were in the studio. We had a TV on, sort of on the side when we were running everything, and it was on mute watching the lottery. So I think that really factored in because we didn't hear anything that was going on. We were just seeing like red lines across the screen and black lines and numbers. Like, what is going on? And then they just had, oh yeah, the Islanders won, and I'm like, and we're all like, wait, did the Islanders win the lottery or did they win like something else and they get moved up? And then they're interviewing, I'm not sure who it was. Again, I listened to it on mute, but they interviewed either an executive or an owner with a hat on. It was an
amateur scout.
Really?
Their head of amateur scouting. Ken Morin, I think is his name.
Okay. No, that's good clarification. Yeah, and I was like, this is weird. Like, they didn't have great odds. That doesn't mean they can't get it, but it threw me. So I think Elliot Friedman, I really like what he said. If they had put out maybe like a 2-3 minute video, either a day before or even like, right before the draft to say, this is what you're expecting, this is how it should look, so fans maybe had a better understanding of what they were looking for, I thought that would have been a great idea. And shout out to Elliot Friedman for that. Yeah, I mean, as just quickly as a Sharks fan, like, it's too bad you can't get the first overall pick. But I think there's still a lot of really good talent in the top. I really hope that the Sharks are able to get Matthew Schaefer. I don't know if he goes first to the Islanders. James Haggins is from Long Island, so I wonder if they go and grab him, being the hometown kid, and they need scoring. That there's going to be a whole speculation we can get into later, right, when they actually draft.
They need someone that's not going to leave.
Yeah, they're still salty about one Toronto Maple Leafs player that shall remain.
They gotta make sure Matthew Schaefer doesn't have any pictures if they take him with pajamas.
Yeah, seriously, I saw that take too. Just I think the one thing that about that point is, like, let's say this was the Connor McDavid draft, and they did like the first pick. Like, everyone's like, oh, who's gonna get the first pick? And then 5 minutes in, you're like, okay, the Islanders got McDavid, like the biggest generational player ever. We already know in 5 minutes. Yeah, I'm not watching. It was a little strange how they did it. I felt like it could have been done better, but I agree, Brandon. It's fair that they shared the process. I think that was cool.
No, and I think you're right. Like, I think it's very fair to, if and I'm not saying you guys are, but like, if you're a casual viewer and you turn that on for the first time, you're like, I don't know what's happening here. Like, they're just doing a lottery basically. Who knows what the situation is? But if they continue to do it, continue to educate people, like they maybe iron out some of the structure of the show. I think it was just different. It was fun to watch and it was cool. But in terms of the Islanders, they just need talent and they need to take the best player available basically at this point. And if that's a defenseman, they should do that because they've got some young prospects up and forward too. And they still got some work to do, in my opinion, obviously, with a bit of a shakeup going on in the front office. So.
Yeah, we'll talk more about this about the draft as we get closer. But yeah, like you said, they have Yzerman and they have Richie, who they got in the Nelson deal this year. So they have some depth up front if they want to go defenseman. Moving on to today's hiring, which was Joel Quenneville going to the Anaheim Ducks. It was reported by Emily Kaplan of ESPN that the other finalists were Jay Woodcroft, Rick Tocchet, and David Carl, which to me is a head scratcher. If you're going to go with Quenneville, one of those three other coaches, you can eliminate Woodcroft from that conversation. But if Carl and Tocchet are your two other coaches in the finalists for that position, that's a little bit of a head scratcher to go with Quenneville. Is it not? Like, what was your guys' reaction to the Anaheim Ducks making Quenneville their next head coach?
Actually, I'm glad that we're talking about it. I had a quick thought on this. Yeah, like, I think if we remove the Joe Quenneville's past, because there's so much that I feel like we don't know, and it's a really sensitive topic. I don't really want to talk about like why he's been hired and all that stuff and things like that, but it's purely hockey perspective. I pulled up just the roster of when the Blackhawks hired Quenneville. He's brought in as an interim in the 08-09 season. And the players, obviously, we know they won 3 Stanley Cups with him at the helm, but the players that we know that are notable from the Blackhawks run, the Patrick Kanes, Jonathan Toews, even the Bufflins early on, Keith Seabrook, they were all really early in their career. So Kane was 19, Toews was 20, Bufflin was 23, Seabrook 23. Like a lot of these guys that are on the team were young. Patrick Sharp, even at 20, he was one of the older guys, 26, whatever. And then you look at the Anaheim roster now, and I'm not comparing players to Patrick Kane and Jonathan Toews. That's not at all what I'm trying to get to, but their core of Mason McTavish is 21. Leo Carlson's 19 still. Trevor Zegras is 23. Minchikov is 20. Lacombe is 20 as well, I believe. And Gauthier even he's still 19 or he's 20. These numbers are in front of me. He's 20 years old.
I think it's just 20.
He is 20. Yeah. So I think just like you can't replicate it perfectly, but I just think when you look at those numbers, it feels like Quenneville has done it before, and you wonder if this is a perfect time to bring a guy like him in to usher in this team that has less veterans than I would like them to have, but they have a mix of some older guys who have done it, the Killorns of the world. They had Cam Fowler, and obviously they decided to move off of him. I still think that it might be strange in a vacuum because you look at all of the options out there, but yeah, David Carl is a hot name, but he hasn't proven anything at the level of guys that are 30, 31. I'm not saying he's a bad coach, but if maybe you have Pat Verbeek, who's played with Quenneville in his career, and I think that's a big reason he got brought in, and they want to make the playoffs next year is what Verbeek's biggest takeaway is, then Quenneville's done it. Not only has he made the playoffs, he's won. So I just think it's a big test, and maybe the league doesn't like it, but I just think he might be the perfect coach for a young group like this.
And Verbeek knows if he doesn't win next year, he's done. Make the playoffs. Sorry.
Well, yeah, and I think that's part of it too. Is the risk in Anaheim is a lot smaller, I think, than it would be in a larger market or a team with real, a bigger media presence, perhaps. I think, in light of the whole situation, I think, it was probably in Quenneville's best interest to at least restart, I guess you can say at this point, restart his career in a smaller market with not a lot of eyes. And if he's able to go in there and have success and everything seems to be okay, and maybe he can kind of gain back some of his reputation, then it might look like a really smart move. But it's, I don't know. I don't really know what to make of it all without knowing what the real details are in terms of how everything went down and whether or not Anaheim is doing something that should be regretful. So I don't know where this heads. I hope the players in Anaheim take it well and are doing happen to be on the rise. They played a great second half of the season, so I think nobody would be surprised if they continue that momentum and have a great year, especially if Quenneville's able to come in, put in some real good structure and help these guys really reach their potentials, which we've, as Alex went through, we've seen some great talent play under him, and he's been able to help them reach the promised land and really, obviously win Stanley Cups. So it's, it's one of those things where it's we'll kind of see what happens, and we just hope for the best for all parties.
Yeah, I think from a pure hockey standpoint, he's a darn good coach. He is a really good coach if you're looking at just a hockey standpoint. I think Rick Tocchet's probably the number one guy that would have been I would have picked Rick over Quenneville in terms of ranking, or power ranking, free agent coaches. Tocchet would have been my number one guy, but Quenneville from a pure hockey standpoint is right up there in the rankings as well.
Do you guys just a quick question? Do you guys think Quenneville had other offers, or do you think he just took the first offer that he got in Anaheim?
No, I think he was. I think he's been interviewed for a couple positions or a couple teams, and I just.
But do you think he had offers?
I think
yes, he's interviewed. They wanted to find out what the situation is, but do you think he had offers?
Well, honestly, I don't know if it will depend. That's a hard question only because he might have had offers, but who knows how far along these other teams are in their actual stages. If they're actually offering positions, is Seattle really offering, or are they still in the interview process? Because they just upgraded Jason Botterill to their GM position. They're going through kind of a transition. Who knows where they are? I'm sure Boston, if there was one team that would have made him an offer, it's probably Boston. If I'm being honest, that seems the most logical team that would have made him an offer. I don't think Pittsburgh would have made him an offer. It's just and Chicago. I don't obviously he's not going back to Chicago, so there's just no chance of that. So maybe you're right. Maybe that is the only offer that was on the table for him at the moment. But I do think if the longer we went and more head coaching, or like the further along teams got with their searching head coaches, I think he probably would have had a couple offers on the table, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a hard question. It is hard to answer, but I think the point you made, Brandon, about him probably wanting to start somewhere quieter really factored in.
Yes,
so it is possible. Yeah, like maybe he did get offered by either a Boston or I don't even know, a Philly. Like it is interesting to see how long they've gone, or maybe in previous years. Like I think it was not previous years, because I think it was July 1st, 2024 last year when he was reinstated. So maybe one off season, and he decided maybe I still want to kind of see where I'm at. But I think a big factor of maybe he was offered, but he was like, yeah, I want to start a little quieter location to kind of not be the main face of the franchise. And then just last thing, Talkett might not even coach this year. He might want to go into TV from some of the rumblings.
Yeah, I heard that.
So that might factor into that decision too. Yeah, we don't know.
Yeah. No, I just thought that, that's my feeling, is that if he took this job this early, kind of ahead of schedule of some of the other teams, like I think they maybe read the room and said, hey, we might not get another offer that we really like. Maybe he did want to go to one of those larger markets. Maybe he didn't necessarily want like a Seattle or anything like that. But I think that I read into it at least as like, okay, we've got this offer. Let's jump on this. We can get a head start. We can kind of get ahead of the media even too, like whatever there's going to be. And during the playoffs where there's not going to be a lot of attention, like I think it was all around probably a very smart career move for him. So we'll just have to see how it plays out.
I don't know if like this is like good or bad, but there is also a major trial going on right now that probably has a lot more attention on it than him getting hired. So is that a distraction from him getting hired? It's probably a quieter time for him to get hired right now. It's not as much of a, we're going to talk about Quenneville being hired again. It's more so on this trial that's happening in London. So that's also a factor, I think, that goes into it as well in terms of the timing of the hiring. Okay. Last 15 minutes of this show.
Let's do it.
We're gonna talk NBA playoffs, and I'm gonna start off by saying, "Bing bong." I was wrong. The NBA playoffs have been phenomenal in the I'm not gonna say the first round. I'm not gonna walk back my comment on the first round. The first round still not great. The second round of the playoffs, though, phenomenal so far. Phenomenal. Game one and other than game two, but like honestly, like so happy that the Thunder came out and smashed the Nuggets last night. SGA definitely did I took that personally meme after game one. He went, I think it was like 11 for 13 last night, 34 points or something like that. It was absolutely ridiculous. It was insane what he was able to do on the court. But let's focus in on this Boston-New York series, because that's the series that has everyone talking right now, because the New York Knicks go on the road and make back-to-back comebacks. And honestly, they don't even win the game on a great offensive play. They win it with Mikal Bridges and their defense. Give me your guys' thoughts on that. Brandon, I'll go to you first because you were the NBA guy from the jump.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you're not wrong about everything you just said. I think the second round of the playoffs in the NBA have been fantastic. A lot of drama, a lot of close games. I think for me, I was more surprised that the results weren't flip-flopped, I guess, of what I would say is that I was expecting OKC to win their game 2 against Denver, but I expected that to be maybe a tighter contested game than Boston and New York, because I thought New York, while they did a great job in storming back in game 1, I didn't really expect that same type of game style, basically almost near identical to what was going on in game 1. So I think for the Knicks to pull that off twice and to be able to have a 2-0 lead compared to, obviously with what's going on in OKC Denver, where that series is split, I would have expected Boston as the reigning champs to come out and really show New York, who had trouble in the first round with Detroit. I think that's what's surprising people, is that this New York team is seemingly finding its momentum kind of out of nowhere against a team like Boston, who's obviously had success against them in the past. So, yeah, it's been great. And that's not to say, the other series as well have been pretty exciting too. Cleveland going down 2-0 to Indiana on a couple of, last minute plays as well has been just as exciting at points as some of the other series. And then obviously now with Steph Curry out, that brings the Warriors a little bit further down the totem pole, but Minnesota's a great team to watch. And I think no matter who comes out of that series, you're going to have a great Western Conference Finals. So I think, the NBA is in a really good spot in terms of where their second round is heading. And it's just been incredible to watch. The best thing about basketball is when the games are close and when there's real drama, because the last thing you want to see is what you usually see in the regular season, where a team kind of gives up midway through the fourth quarter and you kind of know what's going to happen. So it's been phenomenal to watch, like you said.
Definitely exciting. This has been out there on Twitter, on Instagram, everywhere. But like the fact that obviously the Knicks are 2-0, Leafs are 2-0, it's like we're in a simulation. It's a really weird place. And I think we have to kind of take it for what it is and be excited, because the Knicks obviously are another team that they never win. They can never push past it. And it really looked like they were the team that was getting zero love heading into this series. Boston sweep, Boston in 5 was what I was hearing a lot of the time. And it was just really interesting watching the end of both games and being like, these have to be identical, because Mikal Bridges both times makes a play, first on Jaylen Brown and then on Jason Tatum, and throws the ball down court, and he's celebrating in the camera. They look like identical stills. So just the fact that, like you said, Brandon, that it's mainly off of that defensive structure, and Jalen Brunson is obviously a massive player, and I think he still has a lot in the tank left for that Knicks team. I do find it really surprising that it's 2-0. Like, that would be the one series when you're looking at, like, if which away team won both games, I think that's the last team you'd pick out of maybe the last team out of the 4 series you'd pick. Possibly Indiana because, of Cleveland's dominance, but it's crazy to see. I don't think that Boston is out of it by any stretch, but they're in a big hole. So specifically for that series, it's a great matchup, and they've been very, very tight, obviously, as obviously the Knicks have had to come back both times, 20-point comebacks in both aspects, but series is far from over. So we'll have to see how it goes.
Listen, we might be living in a world in like a month and a half where we're looking at the New York Knicks and Toronto Maple Leafs becoming world champions of their sport in the same calendar year. That would be the end of society. Like, there would not be any existence left in North America after that would happen. Like, that would be insanity. The streets of Toronto, the streets of New York, you would not want to be there unless you are a Knicks fan or a Maple Leafs fan, because for that whole summer, if that is to happen, it is going to be shut down. It is going to be millions upon millions of people just partying it up in the streets, going crazy, losing their minds, because I like you said, it might be a simulation if we are going to see the Knicks and the Maple Leafs take home some hardware this season. Now, I want to ask, the Cavaliers, or the Cleveland Cavaliers, are down 2-0. The Boston Celtics are down 2-0. The 2 heavy favorites going into the second round. Which one is more likely to come back in their series and try and make it to the Eastern Conference Final?
I mean, for me, I would probably lean towards Boston, just because they've done this before. They've won a championship. They had a little bit of adversity, and I think they are more prepared maybe isn't the right word, but they're better suited, I think, as a group to really get through this and to show. They've been so dominant over the last couple of years. Like, I have a little bit more faith in them. And also, I've just been more surprised by the way that Cleveland has kind of let up. They have had some injuries, which I think has affected a ton of their game situations, and they probably don't have the same guys that they usually would in late fourth quarters and important times of the game, or maybe their matchups aren't as good as they'd like them to be. But Indiana has very much surprised me as well. I've always the last couple of years looked at them as kind of as Halliburton goes, they go, but they have a lot of good pieces now that I think they could go back to Indiana as long as they win one of those games. I think they're in good position to win that series, especially if Cleveland can't get healthy fast. So I would probably say Boston is still, to me, the more likely team to come back in this series. But, at this point, I wouldn't be surprised if the Knicks won it as well.
Yeah, I agree. I think for a lot of the reasons you said, the fact they've done it before Boston, if I were to have to just play devil's advocate, just because we're a podcast, we got to talk about it. I feel like as much as Cleveland has to rely a lot on Donovan Mitchell, especially that second game, I think he put up like a game high 48 points.
He had 48 points, yeah.
Insane stuff. It's not surprising, but to see them have to put this team on his back. Indiana is, I think, a little bit more like just inexperienced. They have guys that have done it. The Siakams have won, obviously, with the Raptors in 2019. But that being said, it's still surprising to see that it's played out the way it has. Like, my only defense would be Cleveland might be able to overpower a less experienced Indiana Pacers team in these type of situations. But I don't think that's enough to suggest that Cleveland has a better chance in winning after being down 2-0. I think Boston's done it before. They have the resources. They have the experience a little bit more. It's just a matter of, can they put aside, like, there doesn't have to be one guy. They have the Brown and the Tatum who can kind of share the ball as much as who's been the one in the spotlight more. We don't know. I think they do it, but it's going to be tightly contested. I think both ways. I don't think we see any sweeps in any case.
Yeah, I don't see a sweep coming in any series, but I think the Knicks are actually going to win that series against Boston. I'm full on the Knicks. I'm full on the Bing Bong. I don't know if you guys seen Hank Lockwood off Part of My Take and Jerry O'Connell. That's amazing. That is amazing. Jerry O'Connell's so funny, man. He is so funny. I don't know how he does it. I don't know. Like, I tried saying like bing bong, bing bong, bing bong, like just repeatedly. Like, I don't know how he gets it off his tongue so good. But anyway, that's enough gibberish for the day.
It's very funny.
Yeah, it's so funny. Moving on to probably the last series we're going to talk about here. Golden State and Minnesota. Minnesota shoots 17% from three after they shot 14% from three against the Lakers in a closeout game, and they lose by, I think, 11 points was the total, or the difference in that game, 99-88. Listen, the Golden State Warriors are not going to have Steph Curry for game 2. That was already confirmed. Do you think that this is like, I know we talked about a couple must-wins in this podcast already, but you don't have Steph Curry. Is that a must-win game for like Minnesota to even this series if you don't have Stephen Curry on the floor? Oh, Brayden, I'll go to you first.
I mean, I wouldn't necessarily call it a must-win, especially if it seems like Steph might miss multiple games through this series. So, that they have that to fall back on. But I think, like you said, the fact that they're missing, they're one of their biggest advantages over teams this year was the 3-ball. And similar to Boston, they've been dreadful, obviously, at this second round so far. So if they're not able to find it and they're kind of shooting themselves in the foot that way, not adjusting their game, not being able to obviously eventually make those shots, like I could see Golden State hanging around long enough to give Steph Curry a chance to come back and potentially have some magic late in a series. Do I think that's going to happen? No, I do expect Ant and the Timberwolves to win game 2 and to take a stranglehold over the series over the next couple of games. Just because the difference in talent once Steph Curry's out of that lineup, I think is a little bit too much for the Warriors to overcome. So that will pretty much, I think, be what I expect to happen. But again, you never know when it comes to basketball. These guys can step up at any time and they all have the talent to play. It's just like, do they get the opportunity? And now some of these young kids on the Warriors for sure will have that.
Yeah, I think there's not much else to add. Just that, like, you saw the Minnesota Timberwolves dismantle the Lakers in the first round. I don't think a lot of people had them winning in 5, and the Lakers just seemed to deflate. So maybe that's more of a conversation on how LA performed rather than how Minnesota dominated the series. But when you have a hopefully future face of the league in Ant playing out of his mind, and maybe obviously there's games here and there that he's not necessarily going to come up to his full potential, but he's a young kid that's coming into form, and he lives for these moments, especially with Curry out. I can't see him putting up any more duds moving forward, and then Gobert's obviously playing incredible defensively. So we'll just have to see what ends up happening. But I think without Steph, I think Golden State might be in trouble here. I really do.
Yeah, I would have to say the same thing. I think Jimmy Butler and crew is not enough. I think you do need Steph on the floor if you're gonna if Golden State has a chance of moving on and winning this series, because they're not the same team that they used to be in 2022, even when they won their championship.
Yeah.
Well, guys, that just about does it for this episode. Do you guys have any last things you want to say about your Toronto Maple Leafs when you sit here up 2-0 in the series against the Florida Panthers?
No,
I just want to say, I think next week, when we record next week, will be right. It'll be hypothetically before a game 6 situation, I think.
Yes.
Yeah,
so,
maybe.
Exactly.
I mean, I think we'll be either be really happy. I think we'll be either really happy at that point or really, really.
I will put it this way. I'll put it this way. Next Thursday, when we record, will we be talking about the Toronto Maple Leafs in the Eastern Conference Final, or will we be talking about a Game 6?
My guts to say that we'll be talking about a Game 6, but I would be very ecstatic if we were sitting here saying, "Hey, the Leafs did it somehow, 1-4, 1-5." Like, that seems crazy to me, but that would be incredible. Like, the vibes would be immaculate.
Yeah. That's a safe and accurate answer, Brandon. I'm going to agree with you on that. I do think the Leafs will be up 3-2, and we'll talk about Game 6. So maybe from a positive perspective, if I'm not even going to give another if, because I don't want to think about it. But I'm saying that's what I would, if I were to have to put my money on the line, I think that's where we're at heading into next
Game 3. Just Game 3. Think about Game 3.
Just Game 3. Game 3 is one at a time.
We're on
Just
to
focus
Cincinnati.
on Game 3. We're on to Cincinnati. Yeah. All right. We're on to work and other things in our lives. Thank you for tuning in. Thank you for listening. It was a great episode talking about the NHL and NBA playoffs and everything happening around the NHL. Give us a like, give us a subscribe on YouTube if you're listening, subscribe on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And once again, we thank you for listening and have a wonderful day.